Welcome to Sense of Style. I'm Stuart. Unlike sight and hearing, the sense of smell completely bypasses the rational part of our brain and it moves directly to emotion brain, the hippocampus and the amygdala. And that can lead to some very intense, unfiltered emotional reactions. Usually that happens if you go back to a town you grew up in. You see the sights and hear the sounds, but oftentimes it's a sense of smell that really hit you emotionally. Now, in 2019, I started collecting fragrances, and there were 3 fragrances in particular. I didn't know the bottles, I didn't know the names, and when I smelled them, they really did take me back. They were from another time, but there was one in particular. It was 3 or 4 years ago in a hot parking lot at Walmart, and it was a $15 fragrance, and I was completely transported back to another time, a simpler time, and it really messed me up for a bit, to be honest with you. Nostalgia filtered through the sense of smell can be incredibly powerful. Today I have 15 fragrances from the early 70s to the mid 90s. Let's get to it. Fragrance number 1 is Drakkar Noir. This came out in 1982. It is a barbershop fragrance. And oddly enough, this came out exactly 100 years after the very first barbershop fragrance, Fougère Royale by Houbigant, that came out in 1882. But this was a new kind of barbershop fragrance. The original barbershop, lavender, oak moss, and coumarin. And it made you clean and well groomed. But this was a new kind of barbershop. They added an aroma chemical called dihydromercenol that took the barbershop DNA and made it brighter, fresher, and more aggressive. So it was really punchy and a little bit darker as well. This fragrance also had leather, and the amount of oak moss here was more significant. So it was a little bit darker, but really it was that aroma chemical that made it so popular. And this went number 1 because this was the only fragrance of the ones I'm talking about that I actually wore back in the day. I'm relatively new to wearing a lot of fragrances, and so this has some real nostalgia to me. Now, unfortunately, because of the oak moss ban, this is watered down quite significantly. There is a fair amount of it in the original, but yeah, this is kind of watered down, but I still have it for nostalgia reasons because, yeah, back in the day. Fragrance number 2 is Chanel's Platinum Egoiste. This came out in 1993, and unlike Drakkar Noir, which I did wear back in the day, I got this 2 months ago. Now, the Fresh Fougère started in 1985 with the release of Creed's Green Irish Tweed. There was a perfumer named Pierre Bourdon, and he noticed the popularity of Drakkar Noir with the use of dihydromercenol, and what he did was he ramped it up to 11. And so he created Green Irish Tweed, where the dihydromercenol was so much of it, basically created a new genre of fragrance. Green Irish Tweed was a fresh fougère with green facets. Cool Water was a fresh fougère with aquatic facets, the use of cologne. Now this was a fresh fougère with the use of metallic facets. That's why the name Platinum Egoiste, because this has sharp metallic sheen to it. And that comes from, of all things, geranium. If you've ever smelled geranium, it has a sharp freshness to it. It was used a lot of geranium in this, although generally they are all somewhat similar. But it is a lovely type of fragrance to wear, especially in warm weather. I got an email from a guy the other day. Someone had recommended Platinum Egoiste to him, and he asked me, as a 60-year-old, do you think that is a good fragrance? And all I could think was, my God, I don't know if I could think of a better fragrance for somebody in their 50s or 60s to wear than Platinum Egoiste. Next up, we have Ysatis. This is by Givenchy. This came out in 1984, and this is marketed to women. And it might seem strange to be on this list. However, women's fragrances can really evoke that feeling of the past just as much as men's. And when I smelled this, man, this smells like the 80s. I definitely recognize this fragrance style. And if you think back to what the 80s were, everything was projection and presence. Women had big hair. They wore shoulder pads. The colors were bright, and it was a very optimistic but sort of in-your-face time, and that's exactly what this fragrance does. It is not a delicate floral by any stretch of the imagination. It's a white floral woody, and the white florals are jasmine, orange blossom, and tuberose. And so this has, the tuberose adds a little bit of punchiness to it. So it's kind of an in-your-face fragrance, but definitely of the 1980s. This also has civet to it. So aside from the projection, this also has that animalic 80s feel, that sort of macho dominating feel. And they did it even in fragrances for women. Fragrance number 4 is Calvin Klein's Obsession. This came out in 1986, and it was one of the very first sweet fragrances for men. And the reason they got that was this has no oak moss. Oak moss was used as a fixative. It was used in almost every male fragrance, but there's none here. So it allowed the amber and the spices to sort of run free. And really that's what this is, an amber spicy fragrance. So it's a different kind of sweetness that you get today, which is more vanillic and tonka. There's a lot of amber here, although in this case the amber is backed up with myrrh, moving it in more of a darker direction. The spiciness is mainly cinnamon, but you've also got nutmeg and coriander in the background. There was a female version of this, and both sold very well, based largely on the fact that the advertising was pretty sexually explicit, especially for 1986. But yeah, I'm very lucky. I have a vintage bottle, you can tell, because the atomizer is built in, so I get a little bit extra punch. Next up, we have Dior Fahrenheit. This came out in 1988, and this is one of the fragrances that when I tried it, I knew immediately that I'd smelled it before. And when you do that, you kind of try and place where you smelled it. I couldn't come up with anything, but I definitely knew this scent, and it is so distinct. If you have smelled this before, you will notice it, because this, unlike the other fragrances I mentioned with had the extra dihydromercenol, this has a lot of extra violet leaf. The aroma chemical for violet leaf is used in very large quantities. They mixed it with leather, giving it almost like, I mean, everyone says it smells like gasoline. It doesn't smell like gasoline to me, but I can certainly understand it. To me, it's got green facets. If you mix grass with gasoline, that might work for me. But this DNA, I think, is special. I really love it, and I always want to have a bottle. And one of the great things about this is fully captured. It's not exactly like the original formula, but a lot of the essence of the fragrance is still here. It has a real body to it. Next up, we have Jovan Musk, a fragrance from 1973, and this is the fragrance that absolutely destroyed me in a Walmart parking lot, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. This is a fragrance that was very, very prominent everywhere, and it still is. You can still get this. I got this $15 Canadian at a Walmart, and you can see it's very, very basic. The atomizer is simple. But because of that, it was everywhere back in the day. Unlike something like Old Spice, where I actually know the scent and I know the name, this name I didn't know. I didn't recognize the bottle, but the scent was like an old friend. I knew it immediately, and it was destabilizing. It's like, what is this? Like, why do I know it so well? And yeah, it just took me right back to when I was in my 20s, 30s, whatever. I can't really place it. This is a lot of spices. There's a generic spice note that has some pepper in it as well. A lot of musk, obviously, little hint of amber. Very cheap scent, about 4 hours. Not something that you want to buy and wear today, but boy, if you're looking for a nostalgia trip, I can't think of anything stronger nostalgia than this. Fragrance number 7 is YSL Kouros. This came out in 1981, and this fragrance is infamous. However, it's important to point out that it came out in 81. That was right in the heart of the power fragrance era. From 78 to 82, that 5-year span, everything. Lots of leather, lots of animalic notes, lots of musk, usually a little sprinkling of honey on top, but everything was strong and powerful. It might be related to the politics of the time, Reagan and Thatcher. I don't know, but it was a very different time in terms of producing fragrances, and I think Kouros just really represents it better than some of the other fragrances do. This is Quorum by Puig. This also came out at the time. Then you've got Pour Louis by Oscar de la Renta. Again, a very similar fragrance, and even to a certain extent, Polo Green. This has leather and tobacco. Now, this does have that sort of fresh pine note that makes it a little bit different, but the original formula of this was quite punchy. But the one thing about Kouros and also Chanel's Antaeus, those are the two fragrances that have maintained the quality of the era. So if you really want to get a feel for that hyper-masculine era, this is actually worth a purchase. It's so different than what men are wearing these days. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting study of culture, just how different things can be in different times. Fragrance number 8, this is Polo Sport. This came out in 1994. 4. And this is one of the more successful sport fragrances. The fact that it's an American house does make a lot of sense. Growing up, I think in Canada and the United States, we were less serious about fragrances. We're more casual. In continental Europe, they take it more seriously. They're going to look at something like a sport fragrance and go, it's kind of just watered down. But the casual scent does work in North America, thus it's an American brand that made it, and this is a very popular fragrance. The proof is in the pudding. They just released a 2026 version of this 2 weeks ago. I'm not kidding. So they took the core of this fragrance, which is mint, lavender, and citrus. There's a little bit of seaweed in here as well, and they added some modern notes. Not surprisingly, it has orange blossom and pineapple. Those are two, especially orange blossom, two very popular modern notes. But I do think it was time to update it. As usual with a lot of these older fragrances, they've been reformulated a lot. And even though the performance is there, and when you smell them, it really does capture the time, the depth of the fragrance has definitely been changed. Although I still have worn this in a gym. Fragrance number 9 is Armani Acqua di Gio. Came out in 1996. This is actually the Eau de Parfum version. I don't have the original, although this is quite similar to the original. It is the #1 selling men's fragrance DNA of all time. And it's like that for 2 reasons. Number 1, it was a really good mix of aromatic notes, citrus notes, and sea notes. Just the perfect combination. Really, people loved it. But the second reason, it might be just as important. Basically, everything was changing in the mid-90s. It was like the power fragrance era was over. And when it came to warm weather, something like this, fresher fragrances started to emerge. And as I said, the formula for it was really good. Now, and when it came to winter, cooler weather fragrances, that was Le Male. That took over. So yeah, it was just the end of an era and the start of a new one. And so this was kind of opportunistic, and it's done extremely well. And it has a nice airy quality to it. And for something fresh, the performance is very solid. Next up, we have Davidoff Cool Water. I mentioned Fresh Fougères earlier. This is the aquatic version. It came out in 1988. And the aquatic version was the version of what was called the Ozonic Project by the person that created this, Pierre Bourdon. He created the Fresh Fougère. He preferred this formula more to the one of Green Irish Tweed, which he also created. And so he held on to it, eventually sold it to Davidoff, and the fragrance made a couple of $2 billion in 20 years. So it's one of the best-selling fragrances of all time. And it still works. To me, this works. It has been reformulated. It's not the crazy beast mode. None of them are really that the original was, but it's still really, really fresh. It's still long lasting. I get about 6 hours with this. It does have a resemblance to Green Irish Tweed. No matter what they tell you, it's not exactly the same. It's certainly a lower quality, but for what I paid for this, it's a 40 ml bottle. If I bought a 200 ml bottle and I wore it every single day in the summer, I get a ton of compliments. It is an elite formula. It still really works, but it was the use of cologne here that differentiated it from Green Irish Tweed. Cologne was used in heavy quantities here, and that's what they used for C notes for the longest time. But yeah, this one's great. Next up, we have Chanel number 5. This is an original bottle. The original came out in 1921. This was a reformulated bottle. I think this is from the 1990s. But the fragrance was still really popular in the 80s and 90s. In fact, in the 80s, Chanel spent more on advertising than this, at the time, 60-year-old fragrance than they did any of the other fragrances. So it was still a big seller. Now, it does have a very old-fashioned DNA. The animalic notes here, yeah, they're a little bit stronger. I mean, you can see it would come from the 20s. There's a lot of musk in here as well. Fundamentally, though, it's a woody, powdery fragrance. There's iris here and a lot of woods. But the thing that really made this was the aldehydes. It was an aroma chemical, and prior to this, if a woman wore a fragrance, it just smelled like a bunch of flowers. Aldehydes added a little bit of extra freshness that you didn't normally get. And apparently the legend is that the perfumer's assistant put too many aldehydes in one of the bottles, and it was number 5, and that was the one that Coco Chanel chose. But I mean, she was right, because this went on to become kind of a legendary scent. Next up, we have Gray Flannel by Geoffrey Beene. This came out in 1975. This is a recent acquisition of mine. People kept telling me to buy it, and I finally took the plunge, and I have been pleasantly surprised. There have been numerous companies and many different reformulations for this over the years, and yet I still find now, I obviously can't compare this to the original formula. I don't have it, but there is still some depth here. There is still some projection. There is still longevity, and this is still relevant. If you are wearing a really nice wool coat in cool weather, whether it's fall or winter, what people normally do to get comfort in the winter is they will give you a sweet fragrance. Those are the winter fragrances. Now, this actually feels a lot of violet. There's galbanum, which has a green note, so it's green and fresh and powdery. There's some orris here too. It feels, I don't know how, but it feels like you're wearing a nice, comforting wool sweater. So it really does work with a nice suit in cool weather. And I was super impressed with this fragrance because it costs half nothing. So, you don't have to be old-fashioned to wear it, but if you dress up in the winter, it's a great, great fragrance to wear, even to this day. Next up, we have Karl Lagerfeld's Lagerfeld Classic. Came out in 1978, and I have done a few old school videos in the past, and without fail, if I don't put this in, somebody will say, what about Lagerfeld Classic? This is surprisingly popular. I suppose part of the reason is it did make a cameo in a big movie. You can clearly see the ring here in the movie Scarface. It came out in 1983. That's 5 years after this was released. So yeah, it made a cameo in the movie. This is a sweet tobacco fragrance, kind of like an old school sweet tobacco. So instead of tonka and vanilla with tobacco, you use amber here as well. There's also some orris. It has some aromatic notes underneath. I find the performance here in terms of longevity to be very solid. It's not my style of fragrance, but yeah, a lot of people really like it, so I could not leave it off this list this time. Fragrance number 14, this is Givenchy Gentleman. This came out in 1974, and this is a vintage bottle. It has been reformulated. It is now called Givenchy Gentleman 1974, and this is a heavy patchouli, woods, and leather scent from a very different time. Now, it's kind of a power fragrance in a way, but it features patchouli more than some of the other ones do. So yeah, it's kind of like a power fragrance with patchouli. It's not part of the power fragrance era, but to me, to my nose, it does come off that way. And the crazy thing about this vintage bottle, you can tell it's a vintage bottle because it's got a silver cap, is that this still works. It has not gone off, and this bottle is at least, like, the earliest this bottle was purchased was the 1990s. It was my dad's bottle, and it smells spectacular. The open here smells a lot better than the newer formulas, which have those animalic notes, like heavy in the open. The open here has been changed quite significantly, but in the dry down, it's still very similar. So this was kind of a legendary fragrance. In 2017, Givenchy used the name Gentleman again. And as you can see here, the word Gentleman and Givenchy have been reversed. The newer bottles have Gentleman at the top. The older bottles had Givenchy at the top. Just a nice little quirk there. But yeah, this one, definitely a classic, lasted for a long time as Givenchy's top seller. And finally, we have Versace Blue Jeans. This came out in 1994, and I put this on here because I really like it. It's obviously, I haven't tried an original bottle, but I still get 6 or 7 hours in terms of longevity, and I really like the scent. The weird thing is that this was one of their, even back in the day, it was an inexpensive version of a Versace, but the composition is great. It's a lot of citrus. You're going to get mint and lavender as well. But what I like about it is there's vanilla and tonka here in the base. Now, it's not the vanilla and tonka that you're going to get these days. It's much, much lighter than that. But there is a sweetness underlying all the other notes that I do pick up, and I really like it. Kind of like Versace Pour Homme, but a little bit more playful. And I love the fact that the performance is very solid. Now, it's not a lot of projection or anything, and it's not super high quality, but yeah, mid-90s, still a nice fragrance. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was a real throwback to a different era. I like to do this about once a year, go through a whole bunch of them, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.